So we already did some of the practice with adding and subtracting fractions. Now we're going to summarize it with some notes. So if fractions are added that have the same denominator, add the numerators. And keep the denominator the same. But then you do need to simplify potentially at the end. This is basically the simplest adding problem. You just got fractions, it's not even mixed numbers, it's already the same size pieces, so you're just saying how many pieces you have. So for the example here, we have 1/8 plus 3/8. The book sometimes shows that you would say equals 1 plus 3 over 8. You don't have to show that step, but if you do, it's fine. Instead, you can jump to it equals 4/8, but now you can simplify it. Sometimes when I'm simplifying numbers, I do write the divide by this, divide by that. You just have to make sure you show it on the top and the bottom if you're going to do that. Other people go ahead and say, if I divide that by 4, I get 1. If I divide that by 4, I get 2. They do it in their heads.
Do you just do it like that?
Huh?
Can you just do it like that?
Mm-hmm. So this is what you need to show. You need to show that when I add them together, I get 4/8, which simplifies to 1/2. But some people do show an extra step here and there. For the next one, if a fraction is subtracted from another fraction, and they have the same, subtraction, yeah. And they have the same denominator. I'm like, didn't we just do this? No, that one was addition. You're going to subtract the second numerator from the first numerator. And keep the denominator the same. Now the reason I broke it out separately like that, and at the end simplify if you need, you're going to see that throughout all our fraction work basically. But I separated it out like that because sometimes when mixed numbers are involved, people just want to all of a sudden subtract the first fraction from the second fraction because, hey, it works better that way. Now you always have to subtract the second thing from the first thing. So here if I have 7/10 minus 1/10, again, in your journal, they showed that you could write a step where it would be 7 minus 1 over 10. You don't need to show that, though. I have 7 pieces, and I'm taking away 1 piece. I have 6 pieces left, and those pieces are 10. But then you want to simplify it. Again, some people, like me, have too many numbers floating around in their head. So if I said, I'm going to divide by 2, I might accidentally write down 2 here instead of writing down the 3. So that is part of the logic and the reasoning why sometimes I do show divide by 2, divide by 2. It's just so that my numbers get put on the paper instead of floating in my head. Now, if we are trying to add or subtract fractions that do not have the same denominator, now we're talking about some good stuff. Change each fraction to an equivalent fraction with a common denominator. Who can predict what it's going to say here? Preferably what?
Least common denominator.
Preferably the least common denominator. Not necessarily, though.
Show me the denominator.
So we prefer you use the LCD. But if you don't, it's okay as long as you do all your steps carefully and you simplify as much as you can at the end. Bless you. Then add or subtract and simplify if needed. So at the end it just says this because it's basically just referring to the past notes. So add or subtract, just like we talked about. So if I have, we're going to have 2 examples, one with addition, one with subtraction. If I have 2/3 plus 1/2, I do need to show making them same size pieces. So 6 is both the quick common denominator and the least common denominator. 4, 6 plus 3, 6. And again, sometimes I'll do the times 2 versus times 3 to make sure I'm carefully making equivalent fractions. You add them up, you get the 7/6, and then you make it proper. So part of your simplify if needed is making a proper answer. The subtraction example, we'll have 11/12 minus 3/8. 24ths is their least common denominator. So 22/24 minus 9/24. There's legit times when I can't subtract 9 from 22 and I have to do all scratch work off the side. And sometimes I can do it. It's really a mixed bag what my brain can do on different occasions. So it's up to you if you want to do a little bit of subtraction practice, scratch work off the side to make sure you're carefully borrowing and all that stuff. Or if you're going to do this part mentally, 22 minus 9 is 13 over 24. It's good so far. Thumbs up?
Yeah.
Alright, that means I'll clear it and scroll it because we're going to get to the mixed numbers part next. That's where the good stuff is. Clearing, scroll it up. I said scroll it up. There we go. To add mixed numbers. That part's not usually so bad, except you have to rewrite the whole mixed number if you have to make common denominators. Yeah, I'm talking to all of you, not just one in particular. To add mixed numbers, add the whole numbers and add the fractions. Change two equivalent fractions with LCD if necessary.
Oh yeah, I totally did
And simplify if needed. So basically, each part of these notes builds on the previous part. We just talked about, making equivalent fractions LCD, so we don't need to talk about it again in this step. So for this example, we have 2 and 5/6 plus 3 and 4/9. You can do your work vertically or horizontally, so you can rearrange it if you have a preference. In our notes, we're just doing it horizontally here. We're going to make 18ths. So 2, this is what I do a lot of times. And it's part of it's my paranoia that I'm going to forget what I was just thinking because my memory's so bad. As soon as I made the decision to make it 18th, I write 2 and some amount of 18ths plus 3 and some amount of 18ths. I legit don't want to forget that I decided I'm going to make them 18th.
I do that too.
Then I go ahead and figure out what the equivalencies are. So that's just, if you're as scatterbrained as me, you could do that if you'd like. So times 3, so on the top I need to times 3. That was times 2, so on the top I need to times 2. I get 5, and again, sometimes I can add 15 plus 8, sometimes it's a little challenging. So I take 5 of those, it makes it 20, now I'm up to 23/18, which is improper, so 6 and 5/18. Whew, got it out. And then also some people have another step, and I'll show that here, but you don't need to show it, so I'll put it in like square brackets or something. That it's 5 plus the 23/18 became 1 and 5/18. Because they don't want to accidentally make it 5 and 5/18, or, so some people break out the improper fraction as its own kind of step, but you don't have to do that. And then to subtract mixed numbers, this, in my opinion, is the most challenging type of problem with the whole fraction work. If we don't have the second fraction small enough. So to subtract mixed numbers, try to subtract the fractions first. Change to equivalent fractions with LCD if needed, of course. If the second fraction is larger than the first fraction, supposed to say fraction, trade some of the first whole number for its fraction equivalent. Usually just trade 1 in to get 14/14 or 8/8 or whatever you can add on. And then after subtracting the fractions, go ahead and subtract the whole numbers. And as always, simplify if needed. So for this example, we will have 2 1/6 minus 1 2/3. We are going to make them both into 6 if you want to use least common denominator. So 2 1/6 minus 1 4/6. And then we let out a groan because that means we need to borrow. 4 6 more than 1 6. Legit, when we go over these types of problems, like throughout the whole unit, you'll hear me go like that. Because it's a nuisance to have to deal with this next step of taking one of that 2 away and now having 7 6 here. Minus the 1 4/6. We get 3 6, which simplifies to 1/2.
This is the hard way.
And then you might have it vertically. And if you have it vertically, 4 5/12 minus 1 1/2. First we make the common denominators, 4 5/12 minus 1 6/12. See, then you realize 6/12 can't be taken away from 5/12. So 3 17/12 minus the 1 6/12 gets us 2 11/12. And again, some people do show this step. So again, I'll show it, but you don't have to do it. Of making this 3 12/12 to make it clear where that's 3 17/12, just so they don't mess up that step. I was gonna do the blank button, but that's not gonna stop this. Make sure you have all your notes.